Today on Corporate Review, join us as we explore innovative technologies, cutting-edge solutions, and timely discussions from leaders across the globe. This is Corporate Review.
Welcome to Corporate Review. I'm Jackie Bales. Thanks to fracking and other oil and gas extraction technologies, the U.S. is on its way to energy independence. Here to discuss these methods and what his company, Crude Energy, is doing to steward the environment during their use, I have with me President Parker Hallam. Nice to meet you, Parker.
Nice to be here, Jackie.
Parker, is it safe to say that fracking, or more specifically the public's perception of fracking, is the biggest challenge in the industry today?
I think it's definitely one of the biggest challenges. The media has portrayed fracking a lot of times in a very negative light. There's a lot of environmentalists out there and a lot of misinformation about fracking. So it's become a challenge for the oil and gas industry because we haven't done a great job of explaining exactly what's going on with fracking. But the reality is it's been magnificent for our country. It's created jobs, it's helped our economy, and without fracking we would be in a much different position. I think oil prices would be well over $100 right now. So it's really changed the landscape, and it's really been a positive for America.
Interesting. Tell us about your company, Crude Energy, and your efforts to educate the public on fracking.
Crude Energy is an exploration and production company. We drill oil and gas wells, mainly in Texas, but also in Kansas and Oklahoma. But we use the newest technology. We drill horizontally, and then we frack open formations, and we produce the oil for the use of the United States. Some of the things that my company does to educate the public on fracking would be on our website, crude.com. There's infographics that are easy to digest and really explain what's going on, how the whole procedure works. There's video. We have a radio show called Powering America. It's syndicated all over the United States, and it's also on the internet as well, where we have callers from all over the United States that have questions about what's going on in the industry and the technologies that are being used, and we do our best to explain it.
Well, let's take a moment and go on site to a Crude Energy drilling rig in this Corporate Review Field Report.
Crude Energy explores, acquires, and develops oil and gas resources while offering investment opportunities through direct participation programs and oil and gas direct participation working interest. Exploration focus areas include Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. Crude Energy focuses drilling efforts in specific regions where they have a competitive advantage. Of note, the Permian Basin, once thought to be old and depleted, has seen refreshing new life through the use of fracking. Crude Energy is a leader in this region.
Our main focus of drilling is right here in the Permian Basin in West Texas. This area is producing over 1.7 million barrels of oil per day now. And in the next 10 years, we think we'll see this increase to 2.5 million barrels of oil per day.
Well, currently West Texas in the Permian Basin has roughly about a third of the rigs here drilling right now that are in the United States. There's right around 550 rigs actively drilling in this area.
The Permian Basin covers 1 million acres currently. It could grow with time as it is growing in reserves. Recoverable currently, we're now at 75 billion recoverable barrels of oil, and that is increasing every year. This could be the biggest oil and gas producer in the world.
Crude Energy's strategy is to maximize the value of their properties and leaseholds by increasing production and reserves, and to acquire additional properties for secondary and tertiary recovery operations.
We currently have the ability to drill about 30 more wells on the acreage that we currently hold here. We're always looking down the fairway, looking at acquisitions, looking at leasing opportunities, and are even evaluating some opportunities right now.
Through the use of environmentally sound fracking technologies and beyond, Crude Energy is paving the way toward a cleaner, safer, and energy-independent tomorrow for America.
Parker, elaborate a little more on the new technologies that are being used to extract oil and gas these days.
There are many new technologies, and the oil and gas industry spends a lot of money on research and development. But I think the biggest miracle in our industry and what's changed the landscape is two things. It's one, being able to drill down several miles into the earth, and then turn the drill bit so that you can actually make a curve and then drill horizontally through the aerial extent of the formation that contains the oil and gas. And then the real miracle is hydraulic fracking. And what that consists of is once the well has been drilled and it has structural integrity, the drilling rig will leave the location and a fracking company will come out there with lots of these big trucks that contain pumping units. And what they'll do is they'll pump millions of gallons of mostly fresh water along with a mixture of sand and some chemical additives that will actually crack open the rock. And the fresh water will crack open the formation, and the sand will go into these cracks and will hold these cracks open, and it allows the oil and gas to drain out of this tight rock. So I would say that has been the biggest innovation in our industry and has really changed things.
And yet we've heard a lot of negatives about fracking lately. How safe is it?
It's very safe. You know, there have been the Department of Energy, the EPA, many universities, many private studies, many publicly funded studies. No one has ever found a case of groundwater contamination from fracking. And I think a lot of people think that, you know, it's a big toxic soup of chemicals that's being pumped down in the wellbore, and that's just not the case. It's 90% fresh water, and then 9.5% sand, and then 0.5% is chemical additives. And those are added in to help lubricate the sand so that once those fractures open up, that sand can get inside of those cracks and hold it open. And the additives that are used in fracking are listed on a website called fracfocus.org, or you could go to my website, crude.com. There's an infographic that shows the different chemical additives. And most of these additives are found in everyday household products. The media portraying these, you know, these big name chemicals, I think play the perception that, you know, that we're just dumping all this toxic stuff into the ground, and it's not the case.
I think also there was a perception that it had to be bad because for a long time companies were not revealing what chemicals were being used. It was all proprietary secret.
Again, yeah, and the oil and gas industry did a really bad job, you know, telling their story to the public of what was going on. In their minds, it's a confidentiality thing of, you know, they want to use their recipe to frack these rocks open, and they don't want to necessarily help another company out that might be competing for the same acreage right next to them. So they didn't disclose it. But now there's laws and there's more regulatory bodies that are forcing these companies to disclose it. But again, you know, there's been many studies done, and there's never been a case of groundwater contamination from fracking. Once the frack is done, almost all of the water and frack fluid that was pumped into the formation is then pulled out and disposed of or recycled.
Now, has it been proven that fracking contaminates drinking water? I know pretty much everyone has seen the video of the faucet being turned on and the water catching fire.
That's from the movie Gasland, and that takes place in Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, there's lots of natural gas because there's a formation there called the Marcellus Shale that companies are drilling into. And Pennsylvania is also known for containing naturally occurring methane, meaning methane that actually leaks out of the ground, and it's been documented for hundreds of years. You know, there's been cases where they even said, I believe George Washington lit a pond on fire. So this is something that's naturally occurring in the area and doesn't really have anything to do with fracking.
Huh, interesting. Now, let's talk about the Permian Basin.
Okay.
And that's where your company, Crude Energy, is doing most of its drilling,
Yes,
correct?
that's correct.
And that's in Texas. Talk about that and why that's so prolific.
Okay, it's in West Texas, and the Permian has a long history of oil and gas production. There's been drilling going on there since the 1920s. There's been decades of very strong production, but the Permian Basin actually, in its peak, was producing 2 million barrels of oil per day, I believe, in 1973. And then it started to go into decline, and in 2007 it got as low as 850,000 barrels of oil per day. But then with new technology, new completion technology, being able to drill horizontally, different completion techniques, it has now since grown from 850,000 in 2007 to now it's producing around 1.7 million barrels of oil per day. And it's producing, this formation is, or this area is producing more oil than anywhere else in the United States. And it's thought to be the second largest onshore oil field in the entire world. First would be Ghawar in Saudi Arabia.
Wow. Now, I guess because of the newness of it, we hear more about drilling in some of the other parts of the country, North Dakota and a crazy boom up there. But so this is really the number 2 oil deposit
in the world. It contains what is thought to be 75 billion barrels of recoverable oil. The Bakken in North Dakota got a lot of attention because it really went, that formation in North Dakota went from basically zero oil production to over 1 million barrels of oil per day now. The wells are very deep. They're 10,000 feet down and 10,000 feet horizontal. And then they put on huge frac jobs of 36-stage fracs. And it's gotten a lot of media attention along with the Eagle Ford Shale, which is also located in Texas. But if you look at the daily production of each of those formations, the Bakken is producing 1 million, the Eagle Ford Shale in South Texas is producing about 1.5 million, and the Permian right now is producing 1.7, 1.8 million. And many people think that over the next couple of years, the Permian production will double. And the reason for that is the Permian has many stacked formations that contain oil and gas, not just one like in North Dakota. It just has the Bakken formation. The Permian has maybe 13 or 14 stacked formations that contain oil and gas. So it's kind of a force multiplier for oil and gas companies because with pad drilling, meaning being able to drill multiple wells on one pad site, you can drill multiple laterals and commingle from a lot of different formations. So that's why you see a lot of the companies that started in the Bakken are starting to move and move into the Permian Basin now.
Interesting. So what do you see for the future of the Permian? Just increased output?
I see increased output. New technology is going to continue to open up new reserves in the area. Texas is an uber-friendly drilling environment. There's lots of infrastructure in Texas that you don't have in North Dakota because North Dakota started at zero and then, grew to 1 million. But in Texas, we employ the majority of oil and gas jobs in the United States. I think the oil and gas industry supports 1 million jobs directly and then indirectly about 10 million jobs, and Texas is the leader. So I see if you look at where the public companies and the independent companies are migrating, it's this Permian Basin area because there's just so much opportunity and there's so many wells to be drilled.
Interesting. Now, here's a philosophical question. Do you think the advances in exploration and production in the Permian will eventually help make America energy independent?
I think it's already helping us making, I don't know that we'll ever be energy independent because we're a global economy and it's kind of hard to de-link from that, but the more oil and gas that we can produce in the United States, the better for the United States, the better for our economy. It creates more jobs, it's energy security. It gives us more leverage in geopolitics, and the less money that we have to send to foreign oil, to countries, a lot of countries that don't really like us.
That's for sure.
So it's helping us become more independent. I don't know that we'll ever become fully independent.
Do you think America will become the world leader in gas and oil production?
I think, we are right now. If you count the production of natural gas liquids and you count crude oil together, then we produce more than Russia and we produce more than Saudi Arabia. If you just count the crude oil, we're in the top 3. I believe it goes Saudi Arabia, Russia, and then us. But with all that's going on in innovation and this drilling renaissance that we're having here in the United States, it's very likely that we will be the #1 producer of crude.
Now, with all this increased production, especially from the Permian, is there a chance we might run out of oil?
I don't think it will ever run out of oil. However, it may get more expensive to get the oil out of the ground. Again, nobody thought this drilling boom would be happening in 2009 in the United States. Not many people predicted that, we would have this huge drilling boom that would help our manufacturing and help prosperity in the United States. But it did happen through innovation from really small independent oil and gas companies are the ones that really figured out how to open up these unconventional formations where now we're competing as one of the top producers in the United States.
So Parker, this all sounds wonderful. Is this a good time for Americans to be investing in oil and gas?
There's never been a better time to invest in oil and gas in the United States. To get these reserves out of the ground is going to take a lot of work, and it's also going to take a lot of money. But there's opportunity in there's opportunity in more states than Texas for private investors or investors to invest in public company to help develop these reserves. So I think we're at a point now where it's not so much based on geology anymore as it is based on technology. It's really technology that's allowing us to open up these reserves. These formations are omnipresent, so you always run into them, you know where you're going to encounter them. And dry holes have really, in certain areas, have really become a thing of the past. Now almost every well you drill produces some kind of oil and gas as long as it's completed correctly.
One more question, Parker, and obviously you're with the oil and gas industry, but
Sure.
Do you think alternative energies can ever totally replace oil and gas?
I'm a fan of alternative energy. I think it's going to take a mixture of lots of different energies to help us meet our energy needs in the future, because the world is growing. There's 7 billion people on the planet now. There's probably going to be 10 billion people here in the next 15, 20 years. So it's going to take a mixture of everything to meet our energy needs. But right now alternatives play a very, very small percentage of the energy mix. Right now the world uses 94 million barrels of oil per day. In 1981 we were using 60 million barrels of oil per day. So right now oil is king. That's it.
Well, Parker, I'd like to thank you for educating us with frank talk about fracking and the investment outlook for this fascinating industry. Thank you for joining us.
You betcha. Happy to be here.
For Corporate Review, I'm Jackie Bales. Thanks for watching.